You know, people always ask me how I ended up owning half the waterfront in my town. Well, let me tell you a story that'll make you think twice before messing with someone who's just trying to enjoy their weekend. It was a gorgeous Saturday morning in late spring, the kind of day where the sun hits the water just right, and you can't help but feel grateful to be alive. I'd been working on my grandfather's old houseboat for nearly 2 years, stripping paint, replacing boards, polishing every piece of brass until it gleamed like new. This wasn't just any boat. It was a 1967 Gibson houseboat, all mahogany and chrome, the kind they don't make anymore. My grandfather had bought it brand new, and when he passed, it became my project of love. The plan was simple. Take her out for her maiden voyage on Crystal Lake, the private lake that sits right in the middle of my 40-acre property. I'd inherited the land from my aunt 5 years earlier, and the lake came with it, crystal clear water, completely fenced, with deed and survey markers proving every inch was mine. Hitched up the trailer that morning, said a little prayer to Grandpa, and carefully backed the boat down my private launch ramp. She slid into the water like she was coming home. For about 10 minutes, it was pure bliss. I was sitting on the deck, coffee in hand, watching the morning mist dance across the water. Then, I heard the shouting across the lake. Maybe 200 yards away on the other side of my fence line stood 4 people with binoculars pointed straight at me. I recognized them immediately. The infamous HOA board from Lakeside Estates, the fancy development that butted up against my eastern property line. Now, let me tell you about this HOA. They were the kind of people who measured grass with rulers and sent violation notices for Christmas wreaths left up past January 2nd. Their president, Karen Hoffman, was a piece of work. Think perfectly styled blonde hair, designer workout clothes, and the kind of smile that could freeze hell over. Karen cupped her hands around her mouth and yelled across the water, "Excuse me, you can't dock that vessel here. This is a protected waterway under HOA management." I stood up, coffee still in hand, and shouted back, "Ma'am, this is my lake! Check your property lines." That's when things got interesting. Karen turned to the man next to her. I later learned this was Robert Chen, the HOA treasurer, and started gesturing wildly. Within minutes, I watched them all pull out their phones. Classic Karen move, when in doubt. Call the authorities? I went back to enjoying my coffee, figuring they'd realize their mistake soon enough. The deed to my property was rock solid, surveyed twice, and filed with the county. Crystal Lake was mine, no question about it. 10 minutes later, I heard sirens. 2 sheriff's deputies came rolling down my private driveway, lights flashing like I was running some kind of criminal enterprise. Deputy Martinez stepped out first, followed by his partner, Deputy Thompson. Martinez walked over, notepad ready. "Morning, sir. We received a complaint about illegal vessel operation on HOA-managed waters. Can I see some identification and documentation for this boat?" I had to laugh. "Officers, with all due respect, this lake is on my private property. Let me grab the paperwork." I walked to my truck and pulled out the folder I always kept handy. Deed, survey, title documents, the works. Deputy Martinez studied everything carefully while Deputy Thompson radioed in to verify the information. Meanwhile, across the lake, Karen and her crew were still watching through binoculars, like they were conducting surveillance. After about 5 minutes, Martinez handed back my papers. "Sir, everything checks out. You're well within your rights to use this lake however you see fit. It's your property." But Karen wasn't having it. She marched right up to my fence line and started yelling again. "Officer, this man is destroying the tranquil environment of our community. This is supposed to be a peaceful waterway. He's disturbing our property values." Deputy Thompson looked at her like she'd grown a second head. "Ma'am, Mr. Johnson owns this lake. You're on the other side of his fence. There's no violation here. But our residents paid premium prices for lakefront views? He can't just float around out there." That's when it hit me. This wasn't about rules or regulations. They were mad because I had something they wanted, direct access to the best part of the lake. Their development had lake views, sure, but they were watching through my fence. After the deputies left, I got curious. That evening, I did some digging online. Turns out Lakeside Estates HOA had a sweet deal going. They'd been leasing a small marina and boat launch on the northwest corner of Crystal Lake from a private landowner named Bill Patterson. For 15 years, they'd been paying Patterson $3,000 a month to dock their community paddle boats, kayaks, and fishing equipment. Here's where it gets interesting. Bill Patterson, age 78, had been trying to sell that marina property for 8 months. It was a small parcel, maybe 2 acres, but it included 300 feet of prime lakefront and a decent-sized marina with covered boat slips. Made a phone call. "Mr. Patterson? This is Jake Johnson. I own the property adjacent to your marina on Crystal Lake. I heard you might be interested in selling." Turns out Bill was more than interested. He was desperate. His health was declining, and he needed to liquidate his assets to move into assisted living. The asking price was $125,000, which for prime lakefront property was practically a steal. "Mr. Johnson, I'll be honest with you. The HOA has been good tenants, but they've also been taking advantage. They act like they own the place, restrict my access to my own property, and constantly complain about maintenance costs they think I should cover. I'd love to sell to someone local." We met the next morning. Bill showed me around the property. A beautiful little marina with 8 covered slips, a boat launch ramp, storage buildings, and a small office that had been converted into a fishing supply shop. The HOA had essentially been running it like their private country club. "The lease expires in 6 months, Bill explained. "They've been assuming they'll just renew automatically. Never even asked if I was planning to sell." I wrote him a check that afternoon. 3 days later, I was the proud owner of Patterson Marina. The irony was delicious. The same HOA that had called the cops on me was now technically operating on my property. He decided to let them finish out their current lease. No point in being petty, right? But I also started doing my homework on exactly what they'd been up to. Turns out, the HOA had been charging their residents a lake activities fee of $200 per year, supposedly for marina maintenance and equipment. With 150 homes in their development, that was $30,000 annually, 10 times what they were paying. Bill in rent, the rest going straight into HOA coffers for administrative costs. When their lease expired in October, Karen Hoffman called me personally. "Mr. Johnson, I understand you've purchased the marina property. We'd like to discuss renewing our lease arrangement." "Of course, Karen, I'd be happy to discuss terms. Why don't you come by Saturday morning and we can work something out?" Saturday rolled around and Karen showed up with the entire HOA board. Robert Chen had a briefcase full of legal documents, clearly expecting to intimidate me into their previous sweetheart deal. We sat in the marina office, and Karen opened with her signature fake smile. "Jake, I can call you Jake, right? We're prepared to offer you the same terms we had with Mr. Patterson, $3,000 per month, renewable annually. It's been working beautifully for everyone involved." I leaned back in my chair and smiled right back. "Well, Karen, I appreciate the offer, but I've done some research on current marina rental rates in the area. Comparable facilities are going for about $8,000 to $12,000 per month." Robert Chen's briefcase snapped shut. That's unreasonable. We've been good tenants for 15 years. I'm sure you have been. Tell you what. Since we're neighbors, I'll offer you a special rate. $7,500 per month, 1-year lease, with annual increases tied to the Consumer Price Index. Karen's face went through about 6 different shades of red. "That's outrageous. You're gouging us because of some petty dispute about your boat." "Actually, Karen, this is just business. Fair market rates for waterfront marina access. Take it or leave it." They took it. They had no choice. Moving 150 families' worth of boats and lake equipment would have cost them more than my annual rent increase. But here's the beautiful part. Remember that $200 annual lake activities fee they'd been charging residents? Suddenly, they had to raise it to $600 per year to cover their new marina costs. The same people who'd been complaining about my houseboat, ruining their peaceful lake experience, were now paying triple to access the lake at all. The best part came 3 months later. Karen showed up at my door with a bottle of wine and an apology. "Jake, I owe you an explanation. When we saw your boat that day, we panicked. Property values, you know? We thought if word got out that there were boats on the lake, everyone would want to bring their boats. and it would become a circus. I accepted her apology, but I also made something clear. Karen, the lake was always mine. You never had any right to control what I did on my own property. All you had to do was mind your own business. She nodded, looking genuinely embarrassed for the first time since I'd known her. You're absolutely right. We overstepped and we're sorry. These days, things are pretty peaceful. I take my grandfather's houseboat out every weekend, and the HOA folks wave when they see me. Their residents seem to enjoy watching the vintage boat cruise around. Turns out it adds character to their lake views rather than ruining them. Karen even asked if I'd consider offering boat tours for their community events. I said yes for a reasonable fee, of course. The marina is doing great business. I've opened it up to the general public, and it turns out there was huge demand for lake access in our area. Between the HOA lease and individual slip rentals, I'm pulling in about $15,000 per month. Not bad for a weekend. Hobby that started with someone calling the cops on me for using my own lake. The lesson here? Sometimes the best revenge is just being successful. When someone tries to control you out of spite or jealousy, don't get mad, get curious. You never know what opportunities might be hiding just beneath the surface. And Karen, she's actually turned into a decent neighbor. Funny how people change when they realize you're not going anywhere, and you might just be the one signing their lease renewal next year. My grandfather always said, "Son, the water doesn't care who thinks they own it. It just flows where it's supposed to flow." Turns out he was right about more than just lakes. These days, every time I take the houseboat out, I think about that Saturday morning when 4 people with binoculars thought they could control my life. Now they pay me rent to park their paddle boats next to my dock. Life has a funny way of working things out, doesn't it? If you enjoyed this crazy HOA story, smash that like button and let me know in the comments. Have you ever had to deal with an overly controlling HOA? I'd love to hear your stories. And if you want more neighborhood drama and karma stories like this one, hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell so you never miss an episode. Trust me, I've got plenty more where this came from. Until next time, remember, sometimes the best way to handle bullies is to become their landlord.